There are going to be times in your life when God is going to ask you to do something that you just don't want to do. He might ask you to leave a job, move to a different city, change your career, walk away from a relationship, or turn your back on what seems to be an amazing opportunity. And if you're familiar with the story of Abraham in the Bible, you know that God asked him to walk away from life as he knew it. And by faith, he left his hometown and went on a journey to an unknown destination. And that's amazing. But if we keep it 100, I'm not Abraham and you're not Abraham. And it's possible that we might not have the type of faith that Abraham had that would empower us to just drop everything and leave. Which is why today I want to help you, as I help myself, learn to be like Abraham and follow God's plan wherever it may lead us and to never look back. So stay tuned. Hey there, extraordinary child of God. I'm SaMonna, and this is a place where you learn to transition from where you are to where God wants you to be. And I can tell you right now that God wants you to be in a place where you trust Him completely and where you will go where He leads you. But as much as many of us want to trust God completely and to follow where He leads, it's hard to walk away from things that we love, people that we enjoy, and situations that are comfortable. And even though it can be difficult, no matter what the situation is, trusting God's plan and following His direction is always the best course of action. So to help you out with this, I want to share with you some valuable lessons that you can learn from a woman who we will call Lisa. Now, Lisa is a woman who experienced what she would consider to be an amazing life. She's married to a good man, a man that she loves and who takes excellent care of her. She's been married to him for many, many years, and the two have been blessed with several beautiful children. Now, in the early years of their marriage, they spent quite a bit of time traveling from place to place. But after years of wandering, they finally settled in their current home. And this is a home that Lisa loves. Now, when they first moved here, they didn't have much, but over the years, their income increased and they were able to live a more comfortable life. One that was much different than the life they lived when they were first married. And the city that they now lived in was just beautiful. The colors of the land were vibrant. There were flowers and signs of nature's beauty everywhere. It was truly like a little paradise on earth. And needless to say, Lisa was quite happy and couldn't think of a better life. She had everything. A beautiful home that she spent years refining and decorating, beautiful adult children, and a community that she loved. She couldn't ask for anything more. She loved the life she was living. But one evening, her husband brings home 2 guests for dinner. She had never met these men before, and there was something different about them. She just couldn't put her finger on it. But as with any guest that came over for dinner, a feast was prepared, and she and her family and the 2 guests enjoyed a wonderful meal. But as they're finishing up their dinner, something strange happens. There's a hustle and a bustle going on right outside of their home. Men are banging on their door and screaming and sounding irate. And she watches as her husband quickly runs to the door to see what in the world is going on. And as he steps outside, her heart begins to beat fast as the noises get louder and louder. Fear begins to grip her heart as she fears her husband is in danger. But before her mind can even really process what's going on, the 2 guests rush to the door and quickly pull her husband back into the house, into a place of safety. And it's at this moment that she realizes that the life she knows and loves is being threatened. And she stands dumbfounded as she listens to the men tell her husband in no uncertain terms that he needs to gather his family together and leave this city. And as they are speaking, her thoughts go to her daughters who are married and no longer live in their home. But her thoughts are interrupted by these 2 men declaring that they are going to destroy the city that she lives in, the city that she has been rooted and grounded in for years, the city she raised her children in and established her home, this beautiful city. Nah, these men can't be serious. But based off the looks on their faces, they are absolutely serious. And this is all too much for her to take in. Her mind is a wreck and she turns to talk to her husband. She quickly realizes he's gone. He's ran off to tell their daughters and sons-in-law what's happening. and she's left at home with her other two daughters who are confused and looking to her for answers. But she has none. This has been quite the evening, and so as she goes to sleep, she tries to process all that is happening. But in the early hours of the morning, she's awakened by these two men, and they're telling her husband to get up and take her and their two daughters, who are still in the house, and leave so that they aren't destroyed when the city's destroyed. Startled from her sleep, she couldn't help but think, are these men crazy? This was such a rash request. What are they really talking about? Did they really have to leave right now? Couldn't they have a little more time to process everything that's been told to them? Couldn't they have time to gather their things, speak to their children again, and make the proper arrangements for a move? I mean, moving takes time. And besides, they had so many things. They had worked hard over the years and had accumulated wealth. And it wasn't easy just to walk away from these things. There were things that she didn't want to leave behind. Why were these two men so intense and trying to rush everything? Even if it was true that they were going to destroy the city, couldn't they be a little reasonable and give them some time? But apparently, time wasn't on their side, because suddenly one of the visitors grabs her hand and literally pulls her out of the house and drags her, her husband, and their two daughters through the city gates. He then gives them very specific instructions. He said, escape for your life. Don't look back. Escape to the mountains or you will be destroyed. And he said it with such a sternness and urgency that she had never experienced before, that it sent chills down her spine. Was this a bad dream? I mean, what was happening and why was it happening so quickly? Don't look back? How could he say that when her other daughters and their husbands were still in the city? Don't look back. Had he considered the fact that everything that she and her husband had worked so hard to obtain was still in the city? Don't look back. How could he expect her to turn her back on a city and a community that she loved? And even though she heard the instructions of the one who had come to save her life from damnation's fire, her heart couldn't let go of the city and everything that it meant to her. Don't look back. No, she had to look back. And in one fatal moment, she chose to turn her head and allow her eyes to gaze upon the place that her heart was stuck at. And she turned and looked back. And what a fatal decision that was, because with that one look, she sealed her destiny. And as the Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 19, Lot's wife was immediately transformed into a pillar of salt. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you today is because you might have the same struggle that Lot's wife had. When we read these Bible stories, it's often easy to read them through hypocritical lenses, clearly seeing how foolish Lot's wife was, but never taking the time to consider that the very thing her heart was attached to, that caused her to lose her life, are some of the very things that our hearts are attached to. And the reality is that the tragedy isn't simply in the fact that Lot's wife looked back, but in the fact that her heart was more attached to her possessions, her lifestyle, her community, and her children than it was to her God. And if your heart is not so connected to God that you aren't willing to walk away from everything, I mean everything, your source of income, your home, your car, your friends, your family, even your children, if they decide not to follow God with you, then you, like Lot's wife, are in danger of looking back. Because when God calls you to walk away from something, He's not just expecting for you to physically walk away from that thing, but more importantly, He's expecting for your heart to walk away too. And when you consider the choice that Lot's wife made, you can't help but consider how foolish a choice it was. The God who loved her, cared for her so much that He decided to send His messengers into her home to pull her out of the mouth of destruction. And instead of looking forward to the beautiful future that God had for her, she chose to look back and long for something that grieved the heart of God so much that He had to destroy it. Extraordinary child of God. God has plans for you, and He knows the path that you should take. He knows the path that leads to destruction and your misery, and He also knows the path that leads to everlasting life. So when He calls you to move in a direction that you just don't understand, when He asks you to walk away from something that you love dearly, when He asks you to move forward in faith and don't look back, simply do what He says and never look back. God is a trustworthy God. He's faithful and He's just, and He cares for His children. Now, if you need help trusting Him, I want you to get a copy of my book, Trusting When It Doesn't Make Sense. It's my autobiography, it's my story and the lessons that I learned on my journey to help me trust God, especially in times when it doesn't make sense. Now, I look forward to seeing you next week, Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you extraordinary child of God. And remember, don't look back. God bless.